everybody. Everybody who's here early and ready to get things started for Emnify's webinar, Build a Winning IoT Solution by Embracing the Cloud. I will kind of be the moderator today. My name is Ryan Chacon from IoT for All. Without further ado, let me introduce, or welcome, I guess I should say, our two experts from Emnify, Chad Kerr and David Garcia. Would you both mind giving a quick introduction about yourself, telling us a little bit about Emnify, and then we can get ready to kick this thing off. Chad, I'll throw it over to you.
Yeah, hi. Thank you again. My name is Chad Kerr again. I'm the VP of Sales for Unify here in North America. My background consists of several years in the carrier side, right? With the likes of AT&T and T-Mobile. So I'm excited to be on here and talk a little bit about how we can, help you embrace the cloud in your IoT solution.
Yeah, and I'm David Garcia. I'm the product marketing manager for Emnify. I have extensive background in IoT and IoT, which is the Industrial Internet of Things. I'm really excited to be here today and help walk you guys through on exactly what Chad just said, how to build a winning IoT solution by embracing the cloud. Emnify actually provides not just the connectivity, but also the platform to help you manage your connectivity. And that's what we're excited to present to you guys today and kind of walk you through on how to guide you through this process of being able to adopt the cloud. So looking forward to get started and sharing that with you guys.
Fantastic. Thank you both for those introductions. Yeah, this is going to be a great conversation. It's a great topic planned. We're going to be talking about the benefits of cloud native stack for IoT, how it can help you seamlessly connect, develop, operate your IoT use cases, tons of other useful information that Chad and David are both going to run through. So I'll get out of the way and pass it over to David to kick things off. And if I have any questions or any kind of things that I might feel might help kind of drive the conversation, I might pop back in and ask some questions. But other than that, everyone who's listening, please throw your questions in the chat on the right-hand side of your screen. And David, take it away.
Awesome. And everybody that's watching, please feel free. This is going to be a very conversational. We're not going to be very super technical. Really what we're trying to do is just kind of help you guys understand some of the trends and some of the value and also just some of the challenges that you can very easily overcome by adopting a different mindset when it comes to IoT. So that's kind of where we're going to start off. So the conversation today, like I said, the title of our presentation is How to Build a Winning IoT Solution by Embracing the Cloud. So let's kick this off. All right, so before we talk about why it's a good idea for people to be adopting this when you're talking about IoT applications, I think it's important to kind of give you guys a little background, give you guys a little bit of context. So for starters, if you're talking about people today that are doing IoT, they're probably juggling multiple platforms, multiple portals, technologies, processes, for each of the operators that they have to use to connect their devices, right? So the problem with that, guys, is that it's actually going to be resulting in a really slow manual process that's going to be taking a lot of time for deployments. You're talking going from weeks to months sometimes. And then also, once you actually deploy, maintaining that connectivity is a real drain and can actually cost you a lot because in reality, the connectivity should be an advantage for your business and an accelerator, not an obstacle to your scalability and growth, right? So if reliable connectivity is the thing that you're looking for, and that's really the priority that you're focusing on when you're thinking about IoT, I'd like you to reconsider, and let me explain why. So for starters, now, reliable connectivity obviously is the priority. Yeah, I get it. But I think if you're thinking long-term and you're thinking about the scalability, the management, the ability to integrate, it's really kind of a mindset shift because everybody knows how to do connectivity because we've been taught the old way, of just being able to get carriers to be able to provide you, a SIM card and your device is up and running and, you're done. But part of the problem is that IoT is really going to require more of a connectivity management, right? Because it's not just about, putting a SIM card and deploying your device. It's about provisioning and managing your deployments at scale, right? It's about ensuring reliable global coverage because we're talking to people that are looking to expand their businesses, sometimes large enterprises or even startup businesses. And if you're not able to integrate with applications, up and down the IoT stack, you can really be limiting your ability to future-proof your solutions. And the problem with that is that it's not just about, dealing with the complexity of having to manage all those carriers. It's also what comes with it, right? You're talking about the billing. You're talking about, what other things, chat, support. Yeah.
Right. So yeah, like I think, David, as you go through this and we take them through this, everyone keep an open mind. Think about how you do business today.
Right.
How do you manage these devices today? one of the things I hear from customers all the time is time is everything, right? One of the other things they say is, I don't have the resources that I need to effectively manage all these devices to ensure that my operations are running effectively. And sometimes they say half the time, I don't even know where half of these devices are. I'm managing them blindly. So keep that in mind as you're going through.
And the reason why what Chad just said is super important is this, guys. If you have complex connectivity that you're trying to manage and you're not able to wrangle your connectivity partners and really enable the device management, what happens is, because of the lack of connectivity, because of the complexity, you'll end up having issues with security, because it's impossible for you to be able to secure your devices if you don't know what's going on with your devices. If there's no way for you to really be able to see or have visibility over the network, you're going to struggle. And that's really the main, these are all symptoms of what the root cause is, which is the lack of visibility. So that's one of the most important parts of why you guys need to start adopting this type of mindset, because security means that you need to have visibility. Visibility means you need to have integration, and integration means you need to have management, okay? So now, one of the coolest things about understanding the focus of transitioning from a traditional carrier to a cloud-based architecture is understanding the value, which you guys already probably do if you're using any kind of applications that are cloud-based. You're using managed services because you want to be able to focus on delivering value to your customers, not on worrying about the infrastructure, right? The high availability, the redundancy, the scalability, the version controls, the updates, security patching, all of that stuff is handled by people that are able to have the resources to be able to manage and give you the services that you need to be able to scale. But if you have all of these services for your devices and for your applications, why wouldn't you want the same thing for your connectivity, right? It just doesn't make any sense.
Hey, quickly, I want to jump in real quick prior to going to the slide. What have you all seen as some of the more, I guess, forward-thinking industries that are adopting IoT cloud-native solutions? And is there really a difference between how the different industries are, you're seeing a different industries approach and adopt it when it comes to these kind of solutions?
Absolutely. That's a great question. So I think for me, because I'll give you my own personal experience. I come from the industrial space, right? I just joined Unify, but the thing I saw very early on was the pandemic really affected a lot of industries to have to innovate very fast. And in fact, this is actually a good segue to this next slide. A lot of use cases that are available today that are kind of innovating, like for instance in manufacturing, predictive maintenance is a good example, was all due to the fact that because of the pandemic, you were not able to travel, which meant that it was really difficult to go service machines. Also, social distancing meant you couldn't have more than 2 people in a confined space. If you guys know anything about those environments, they're usually confined, right? So that meant that you had to rely on the infrastructure, which didn't exist because everybody was so comfortable with flying and visiting customers. So that's why it really, prioritized having to develop and invest in the infrastructure for remote connectivity. Because of that, it also started to gain popularity with other technologies like predictive maintenance. Now, here's something that's really important about why understanding this mind shift, and hopefully this is going to connect a couple dots for you guys. I talk to my customers all the time. And I talk to customers that do predictive maintenance, and they have sensors, amazing AI technology, machine learning, all this stuff that they need to be able to provide maximum uptime and visualization and have data, and it's great. But here's the problem. One of my customers actually was very, very honest and forward and told me, Dave, my problem is that I kind of traded one problem for another. I said, can you please walk me through that? And he said, well, here's the thing. I provide machines that are really precisely calibrated to detect, anomalies and be able to make sure that the health of the machine stays up and there's little downtime. But because I use Wi-Fi in some instances and I use, SIM cards in another, by the way, any SIM card, right? I don't really have a way to really have connectivity managed. So there's too many variables and there's inconsistencies. There's no real defined way of me doing this. Plus, if you know anything about Wi-Fi, it's super unreliable, especially in an industrial space where you have material and metal and, high voltage and all this good stuff. So he basically told me, my problem is that now, instead of me monitoring his machines, I'm having to monitor my devices because they're constantly going offline, and I have to bother them to go check my machines to see why they're not connected online. So that's why, if he would have understood what we're talking about connectivity management, then he would have understood that should have been a first piece of the solution that he was going to be providing, for his customers to be able to have predictive maintenance.
Yeah, and David, I think if you go back and look at some of these, GPS asset tracking, that used to be the table stakes, right, in the
That's right.
IoT environment. Wasn't that complex? It wasn't that difficult to manage. And now we're seeing the need for new functionality, more visibility, more reliability. That all can't happen the way we did things the old way. It just can't happen. We have to advance.
And I mean, that's a common problem with a lot of people that have these amazing technologies. And I mean, that's one of the struggles that people with the EV charging are having. They have a lot. I mean, if you have an EV vehicle, I don't need to tell you, you're going to struggle sometimes being able to find an EV charger that's working, that you're able to actually use, or that's available, and there's not enough of them. Why is that? Because the rollouts, the deployments, the connectivity is their bottleneck, right? This is exactly why these use cases that are specifically tailored for IoT, they're struggling. And that's the problem. But it's not all, doom and gloom. It's actually kind of cool. And that's why it's important to have information so that you can start feeling like there's actually something you can do about it, right? So with that, I think context is really important, especially when you want to understand, well, Dave, these guys are super smart. These guys are developing solutions that are innovating the industry, and they fully understand the need for connectivity. What's the problem? Well, the problem is that we're stuck in the old way of doing things, just like Chad said. Originally, especially if you're talking to like larger organizations that have been around for a while, or people that are starting to, develop their startups, they're going by what we traditionally would use when we're going to connect devices. So in the 90s, we didn't have any kind of automation. We just had a SIM card. Then around the 2000s, we had rudimentary APIs, which gave you a little bit of connectivity management, right? But not really that much. And then you had things like control center platforms that came out in the 2000s that, something like Jasper for AT&T or, other carriers. And those are great because they were a management platform, but they're a proprietary management platform with limitations designed by people who are not focused on IoT. Their focus was people, and that's okay, right? Machine to machine communication is not their main business. So understanding the complexities, the nuances, and really the integrations and all that good stuff is not really their forte. That's not really what their expertise is. So if you take a look at that and understand that that's kind of what people thought you had to do when you were doing connectivity, it's easy to understand why they're going to build their solutions and not understand that there's a better way to do it with integration, with management, with security in mind, right?
I would say I go back to, the time piece, right? There's so many people that have certain things that they have to do as it gets these things off the ground floor, right? But they also have their regular responsibilities that they have. They also struggle with new projects getting added on, integrations, all these other things that happen. And do they have the assets? Do they have the resources to get this done? And I look at here, think about how many companies I talk to deal with their IoT connectivity. They're dealing with multiple carriers. They're dealing with multiple platforms. They're dealing with what network access can I get to? All these problems are real. So the things that you're mentioning right here is a perfect example of how
so in order to move past the limitations of geography, the limitations of legacy apps, right, and the limitation of the infrastructures that are already in place that you guys keep building on top of, and then wonder why you're not able to innovate because you're not able to provide the customers what you really want to because you're limited by the infrastructure, right? That's why today a full cloud experience with capabilities and everything integrated is going to give the customers exactly what they need. And you know what your customers need, and you want to provide that to your customers, but you can't because you don't have a single global network that allows you to leverage your connectivity to actually be an advantage instead of an obstacle, right? That's why I'm really excited for you if you're here, because hopefully this is going to make you feel empowered and have some direction and some guidance on how to move forward to, be able to move past this. And the reason why this is kind of an important topic in context, like I said, which is always important for me, for my customers to have, is this. If you look at the left side, this is what a traditional operator is going to offer you when you're offering global connectivity, right? You're talking about having to what's called home routing. So it's going to have to connect all the way back to home base and then send all the way back. That creates latency, right? That latency is not going to be good for the life of your battery, the life of your devices. Plus, if it's not communicating, what's going to happen? It's going to keep trying and it's going to have to keep waiting. So we're talking about low power, wide area network technologies or resource constraints, low power, like applications where these devices have to conserve energy, and this is not good for that. Additionally, if you're talking about being a global, of having a global footprint, you're going to struggle because You're going to have to, worry about being in compliance with data privacy agreements, especially Asia Pacific and Europe, right? So if you're looking at the right, you have a distributed platform with regional breakouts. That means that your data stays local. That means that the latency is reduced dramatically. That means that compliance is not a problem. That means that having availability and redundancy is going to be, a totally feasible thing for you, because you're counting on somebody that has the infrastructure already in place. That's why if you understand the context, the history, and you know what's coming, this is why you need to be prepared to be able to adopt and be ready to take advantage of whatever is going to be coming in the future with technologies.
And I think you hit the good point, right? High availability is the key factor here, right? You
That's
need
right.
to have that and to be able to scale and be
You
able to have
can't do that if you don't have that redundancy and that high availability that comes from having a managed service provider, right? And then the other thing is this. Today's connectivity, oh my God, it's overlaid on a changing coverage map with a lot of volatility with the technologies. In order to achieve global coverage, IoT businesses have to start to manage multiple networks, multiple SIMs, the operator contracts. So your time to market is going to really be impacted. Plus, there's things that are sunsetting, emerging technologies, right? This is why this is a big issue, because I have customers that had, they're a startup and they're doing EV charging, for instance, and they had to literally replace thousands of SIM cards. Do you understand the impact that has on a startup when a technology is sunsetting and they weren't very knowledgeable about the devices that they had and the capabilities, and having to swap all of those SIM cards out? That's a big problem. That's what's the problem with having a standard SIM card. Additionally,
let me add one more thing to that, David, before you go, right? So I've been part of, working for a large carrier, 2G, 3G sunsets, working with a lot of utilities companies. And they were always just going, they were from 2G. Okay, so now I got to update. I'm going to go to 3G because the cost was there, right? And it was the easy transition, even though they had to replace devices, things like that. Now we're at 3G sunset. Now they're looking at us like, what do we do, right? And all of this, we've prepared the customers for ahead of time, but they weren't willing to look at, future-proofing their business. And, we don't want to let this impact the evolution of the business any further.
No, that's exactly right. Because not only do you have to be worried about the sunsetting technologies, but like I said, new emerging technologies. Are you going to be prepared to take advantage of them? Because just as costly as it was to replace a SIM because of a sunsetting technology, it's going to be the same thing if you want to take advantage of the new technology, right? So regardless, you're always going to be in that weird pattern where you're going to be constantly having to swap out those SIM cards. And that's the problem, because satellite, it's coming. New technologies like IoT Safe. IoT Safe is based on GSMA standards. And essentially what it does is it provides you the ability to have the SIM card actually store and manage the security keys, right? So that means that because it's based on GSMA specifications, you're going to be able to have device agnostic security that's going to be able to help you safely onboard your devices automatically. What that means for somebody that, let's say, is a hardware manufacturer is that you're not going to have to worry about having a TPM module or HSM module to provide security. It's going to be built into the SIM card. How cool is that? Imagine the cost savings on not having to add those modules. Imagine the cost savings on not having to worry about, the updates and all the additional security patching. It's already built in and it's always going to be up to date. And then things like 5G, right? Like, you need to be prepared for whatever is going to be coming and whatever changes are going to happen, because in these next 10 years, you're going to see some incredible changes that are going to happen in new emerging technologies. And because of that, this is why understanding that those changes are going to be really difficult for you to be prepared for and be able to adopt, because you're not going to have the ability to do over-the-air updates. If you have a standard SIM, you're going to be stuck with the version that you have when you rolled out your deployment. So carrier changes, new tariff pricing, data packages, technologies, all of that stuff, you're going to have to swap it out if you want to be able to take advantage of it. Rigid carrier offers, limited SIM capacity, the new eSIMs technologies that's already out there that's going to be developing special applications that you're going to be able to take advantage of to provide even more insights into the device itself and the data. Those are going to be possible because of the cloud-based infrastructure that's going to be used to manage the connectivity. You're going to also be able to overcome the limited control that you have when you're using a traditional carrier with their platforms, right? They all have different functionalities. You're not going to have a standardized experience across the board, and you may be limited by whatever they're able to offer locally whenever you're deploying in that area. And again, the costs associated with having to worry and planning and resources and just the manpower. And by the way, just because you rolled out somebody to go do a SIM swap, it doesn't mean that it's going to be back online as soon as they put it in. Because if you guys know, for the most part, people that are out there in the field doing the technician work, they're not IT professionals. So if you have an issue with an IP configuration, with an APN setting, whatever, those guys are not going to know how to help you. And that's going to add additional delays, right? Or maybe you don't have enough people. That's also a problem right now, right? That's why it's really important for you guys to understand that this is exactly the limitation that we're trying to help you guys be able to overcome. So again, your connectivity can actually become your biggest asset and actually an advantage over your competition. And obviously the security weak spot, because if you're not able to update these and you're not able to do over-the-air updates and you're limited by the functionality and security of your devices and you have no visibility, that's also a security weak spot for you. Again, that's just a symptom of those contributing factors. So I have a question for you guys. This is a quick poll. How many of you guys have actually had, this issue with Sunset, and how many devices do you guys currently have out in the field? I would love to know, because I want to see exactly where we are with this and how many of you guys are currently struggling with this. Who's looking forward to more of these? Because after we're done with today, you're actually going to see that this is actually a really good opportunity for you. And I'm really excited for you that you're here. Okay, wow. All right. Yeah, they are. Awesome. Perfect. So let me tell you why this is kind of a really, really good opportune time for you. If you've been struggling with being able to provide your connectivity, the management that we're talking about, and the scalability, if you go to the cloud base and you have to swap out those SWIMs, why not take advantage of that opportunity and start looking at another option, right? An option that's going to be able to give you optimized coverage, for instance, that's never going to have to worry about, hey, do I have the right tariff plan? Do I have all the carriers available? Is the latest technology there for me to be able to take advantage of? Yes, it will, because you're going to have one SIM, one SKU, and you're going to be able to do all of that through the cloud management platform that we offer you. Also, ensured regulatory compliance. Guys, do you understand that there's a limitation that a lot of these SIMs have in certain countries that don't allow roaming, places like Brazil? What if you could actually overcome that by having local carrier access and not have to worry about the limitation of having to jump to a new carrier every 6 months because you're a roaming SIM card, right? Or being able to access the newest network technology. Like I said, satellite is coming, right? LP-WAN technologies, 5G. Are you ready? How great would it be if you didn't have to swap out that SIM card? What about improved battery life? If you're able to have a dedicated SIM that does just NB-IoT or LTE-M, how great would it be if you didn't have to worry about it failing over to the wrong network and now your device keeps trying to ping and trying to connect, using up that battery life, right? Or racking up, charges on your bill because it's trying to communicate. Or just not being able to give you access and having to deploy somebody to go check out what's going on so that you can reset the device, right? Or leveraging SIM client applications. The applets that are going to be coming with eSIMs are going to open the door for a lot of applications that are going to offer you a lot more functionality for being able to monitor and manage your SIM cards. That's one of the greatest things about having something like an eSIM, because you're going to be essentially able to also use all of the management, all of the future technologies, and the improved battery life, but you're going to have secure element capabilities. Remember I mentioned IoT Safe earlier? If you're somebody who's struggling because you're having to manage all of the different carriers and the different SIM versions for the different locations and geographies that you offer, and the pricing, and it's just a lot, right? How about just having one SIM card that you have one SKU that's embedded into your devices as a device manufacturer, right? Or if somebody that's offering a solution to the market and you don't have to worry about saying to your customer, like my man who was doing the predictive maintenance, here's this awesome technology with AI. Can you put a SIM card and manage that for me? Thanks. No, you don't want to do that. You want to be able to provide a complete turnkey solution that's plug and play, that as soon as you drop it, you're going to power it on and you're connected and you have visibility and it's automated.
And I think, David, you add in these key components here, right? I think most people that I've talked to from the sales perspective, think of eSIM as, oh, I have the ability to change carrier profiles, because if one doesn't work here, I can change to another profile. But you just uncovered so many different things that makes this eSIM technology way more beneficial than just changing to a carrier that maybe has a better coverage in a certain area. So this is fantastic. This is what people should be paying attention to. It's not just I can change.
No, it's not just about like I said, it's not just about that. It's not just connectivity, guys. We have to get past the connectivity. It has to be about connectivity management. You got to future-proof your deployments, because these devices are going to be out there for 5-10 years plus, right? That's the truth. So if that's the case, you need to make sure that you don't have to worry about it. You want to set it and you want to forget it. All right. So can you make IoT connectivity a seamless component of your cloud native stack? I think that one of the big problems that I see when you're talking about people that are still following that traditional method and are kind of like hesitant to move over to something different because that's the devil they know, as they say, is this. Look at the graph and look at the number of devices. That thing is blowing up, okay? And that thing is only going to get exponentially way, way higher. So if you take that into account and you're talking about the integration and the fact that you have different carriers that you're adding to each one of those, you're doing one-offs to increase the coverage. Now you have to worry about testing your resources, managing the growing backlog of integrations, and then having the development team have to worry about maintaining all that connectivity. And plus, you're going to be locked into proprietary systems that you're probably going to invest a lot of infrastructure and a lot of your devices to. So it's going to be even harder for you to be able to replace that. So that's really where a platform is going to be your best friend. And there's a platform boom that happened in 2019. We had up to 620 publicly known IoT platforms, right? The cool thing about that, guys, is that by 2021 and 2022, that started to drop. You know why? Consolidation. It started to kind of have like the best of breed started to really showcase that they were the capable ones. And part of that meant that they were offering the connectivity and integrations, because that's the biggest component of IoT. And that's the biggest opportunity for any of my viewers that are out there that are looking to provide something that's going to be fully integrated, that they're not going to need to worry about, the API integration maintenance, or have to worry about whether or not they're able to actually fit into the ecosystems of their customers, because that's the biggest concern for a lot of people that are looking to integrate connectivity. If I'm providing a solution to my customers and I'm providing something that's going to add complexity, then I've already lost, right?
Well, and David, like I said earlier, like table stakes, GPS and asset tracking was the table stakes of, the IoT environment. Now look at that trajectory right now. Every connection is going to be table stakes as we go forward. So how will you be able to manage all this growth? I mean, that's
right. Especially because, like, if look at this statistic. I mean, the majority of the people that you have out there, they're already using SaaS apps, right? They're using all of these applications, and so you don't want to have to develop, applications that are expensive, custom programming, just to be able to have and maintain and update all of this stuff. You want to be able to go in there and tell them that, yeah, whatever I have is going to fully integrate so that you can share data with your applications that you already have. You'll be able to access data and integrate it directly into your systems, into your databases. You'll be able to visualize a lot more information and have a lot more insights because of the platform's integration capabilities, right? Ecosystems are an important part of any IoT. Think about all the different components, the vendors that are involved in creating an end-to-end IoT solution. And tell me that you're not looking forward to finding off-the-shelf, already purpose-built by experts that understand that part of your solution, instead of having to do it from scratch, right? This is also an easier thing for your development team, which is probably struggling with backlog, because they're not going to have to worry about maintaining that stuff, or have to worry about, not being able to provide functionality or not being able to develop features because they're limited by their infrastructure and their ability to be able to integrate because they just don't have the resources or the know-how when it comes to connectivity, right? So this is a really important thing, and this is part of why having cloud integrations means that you're going to be cloud native, which means that you're friendly for ecosystems which are all cloud-based, okay? And that's why the security aspect is going to be really important moving forward, because essentially you're allowing yourself to be able to have business continuity, because you're going to have connectivity management, you're going to have visibility, which means that you're not going to be at risk of being easily exploited because you don't know what's going on with your devices. Oh wait, what happened? It was. Oh, okay. Looks like there's a missing page from my deck. Anyway, so when you're talking about the seamless connectivity for IoT, right? Automating, integrating, and expanding your global footprint because you have access to unlimited resources and functionality, because you're not limited because you've unified your deployments, means that you're going to be able to provide your customers key insights into things that they'll be able to use to improve, to innovate. I mean, the majority of people that are struggling right now with being able to have, a cloud native platform that's not going to be using legacy infrastructure that's going to limit their growth is going to be drastically reduced because of people starting to realize that this cloud connectivity is really the way to go. So now, the cloud native stack. It's essentially, for everybody that's been watching, this is where the success of whatever you're doing is going to be hinging on, right? If you haven't been able to put together that this is definitely where you want to go, then it's going to be really difficult for you to transition and really be prepared for all the coming changes. And this is really what it's all about. So this is the ending of our presentation. I'm just going to leave you guys with kind of how it should look for you if you are looking to provide the connectivity. You want to be able to have your devices have a single SIM that's able to access all of the networks, that's able to be updated and managed by a cloud. That means that it's always going to be up to date. It's always going to be secured. It's always going to have the latest and greatest. And you're going to be able to fully integrate into your operations teams to help them have visibility, to be able to do troubleshooting so that they actually know what's going on with their network and they actually understand, they know what the customer's calling about before they even pick up the phone. Right? That's the level of service you'll be able to provide with the type of visibility that integration like this is going to provide you. Additionally, you're talking about integration of cloud to cloud. So that means that your business units are going to be able to get a lot more information, a lot more data. You'll be able to get visualizations. It's just a fully complete suite that's fully integrated and that's going to be able to provide you the redundancy, connectivity management, integration, and security, like we promised earlier. And this is just a really quick snapshot of who we are. The only thing that I would like you to focus on with this slide here is that 98% customer satisfaction. That's probably, to me, the thing that I'm most proud of for this company. We really do care about our customer success. And I think that that's by far the biggest highlight for me, is that we do our best to make sure that we simplify things and make people feel that they're empowered and they're enabled to actually make the right decisions to scale and to make sure that, again, the connectivity becomes your biggest asset, not your bottleneck.
Yeah, David, now I'll add one thing. Is like I always talk about with the customers, like, think about it today when you leave this, like, how many carriers do you use today? Do you have one? Do you have two? Do you have three? How many different applications are you managing? How many different management platforms are you managing? Are you managing your devices off spreadsheets? Because I've seen large corporations managing thousands upon thousands of devices off your spreadsheet. How are you doing it today? So if you get anything from this, think about how you're doing business today. And if any of this resonates with you, we'd be willing to have a more in-depth conversation at any time.
Exactly.
Thanks again.
Thank you, guys.
Fantastic, guys. Thank you both. That was awesome. A lot of energy, good conversation. Really enjoyed listening to it. All right, so now we have a little over 20 minutes left to kind of chat about other topics related to kind of what we've been diving into. I have a few questions that I came up with that I want to ask, but at the same time, we'll let our audience have some moment here to put in questions or any comments that they have into the chat. So feel free to throw those in while we're chatting about a few other topics. One of the things I wanted to ask you both is, does it matter how big or small business is to move to kind of becoming a cloud-based solution? Obviously, we've talked about number of devices in the field and if that matters, but from a company size standpoint, deployment size standpoint, just all the different things that could influence someone's or I guess, raise question for somebody to see, are we a fit for cloud-based solution? How should they be thinking about that?
I think, Dave, when you look at even a small business, right? Who's running that division of their IoT, right? Is it one person? Then you think of a large enterprise, is it one person? So this can benefit everybody. It doesn't matter the size of the organization, because time is one of the key components, the resources available to it, the people that have to provide the resources for you. So to me, it's any type of business.
I'll add something to this as well, because this is the coolest part about what we offer. So aside from having the APIs and all that cool stuff, I recognize, and we all fully do, that not everybody is at that point. Not everybody has developers, not everybody's super savvy when it comes to that kind of stuff. But that doesn't mean that they can't take advantage of API and automation. So we have no code options as well. And I have small businesses that are able to scale because of no code options that allow them to automate their workflows, right? So take, for instance, somebody who's doing let's say they're doing GPS tracking for, motorcycles or vehicles, right? And in order for you to set up that device, again, guys, those don't have any screens. There's no anything, right? You have to connect them typically. You have to be next to the device. So imagine the limitation that they have if they have to physically be next to those devices to configure them, set them up, and then connect them to the vehicles and leave, versus having the ability to do a no-code option where you can actually automate the APN, the configuration, and as soon as a customer scans the QR code, you've already activated the SIM and you're connected, and you actually get a notification that the device is active and that it's good to go. Or the customer can receive notifications if they're getting, or their bill is going higher, or if they're almost out of data, so that they can start to see like, hey, that's a little bit odd. That should have more data. Why is it? So like the no code options along with the API options, it just adds too much value and reduces too much of the complexity for startups or for people that are trying to grow their business, that are kind of moving past that stage, that would like to have some automation, but didn't feel that it was within their reach, or just didn't even know that was an option.
Right. No, very good points. And what about when it comes to the use case that they're in, or the industry that they're playing in, right? Like we talked about some stuff earlier. I mean, one of the questions I kind of jumped in and asked you all about industries that are adopting it. But when it comes to the use case, so, we had a poll out there at the beginning: asset tracking, healthcare, manufacturing, EV charging, other kind of, does that matter as much, or is it pretty agnostic to the different use cases when it comes to becoming a cloud-based kind of connectivity solution?
It's pretty agnostic. That's also the coolest part. A lot of people don't realize, I like to position it this way. If you take a device that is, for IoT, a lot of times your main concerns are going to be that thing is not really meant for, secure over-the-air updates constantly, right? That's the last thing you're going to do with those things, is you're trying to save bandwidth, and it's just not that intelligent. So having something like, an intelligent platform with a SIM card that helps you mitigate risk by providing things like firewalls, secure VPN connectivity, and just DNS protection, that stuff is super valuable, because now you're actually making your device a lot smarter, right? And you're providing yourself the ability to have visibility into actual network activity, which means that now you're actually letting your customers know that that device that's out in the field, they actually know what's going on, and they actually can keep an eye on the goings on for those devices. So it's actually really valuable for these guys to understand that the capabilities actually enhance your hardware.
Right, all use cases, right? I mean, it doesn't matter. You need to be able to have visibility into everything. I don't care what it is. So there's not a use case that wouldn't benefit from this.
Absolutely. And I know you guys touched on this earlier, but it's good to kind of pull a thread on a bit more here. And I get this question all the time in our podcast episodes, is around future-proofing coverage, right? We talked about sunsets. We talked about kind of what you should be thinking about, how to prepare for those, what happens if you don't prepare for those. But when you're moving to a cloud-based connectivity solution like we're talking about here, how does that help or play a role in future-proofing the coverage of a deployment that's already out in the field, or one that is potentially going to be deployed kind of in the near future?
Yeah, I'll fill that one. So the cool thing about having cloud-based architecture is that, again, you're talking about having the management done by something that's going to be using experts, that's going to have everybody available, that's going to have the latest and greatest technology, that's going to be suited specifically for these types of applications. So our foundation is built directly on being able to access the partnerships and everything, and be able to automate it automatically, because of the scalability that's offered from our, our cloud-based network. So any changes that happen,
Right.
like I was talking earlier, pricing, maybe new carrier availability or new roaming capabilities, in places like Brazil, you're going to be able to have all of those things, and it's managed over the air in a really simple, hands-off touch. You don't really have to worry about it. It's done for you, and that's kind of what we provide. It's a really seamless way to integrate any changes and prevent any loss of connectivity because of technologies that may be sunsetting, or again, satellite or whatever.
Right. Yeah. Chad, anything else to add there?
Oh, that's a perfect explanation of it.
Great. Another question I had was, so what are some of the top considerations that a business needs to be thinking about when they're determining their solution, kind of getting, figuring out what the solution is, building it out, and how to kind of approach all of that together? If you can take us through kind of top considerations that companies need to be thinking about.
Provisioning and management of deployments at scale, right? Are you able to do that? Is that possible? Or is that something that's actually a really big problem for you, right? Reliable global coverage. Are you able to provide that? And is it able to be managed, and are you able to integrate and have visibility over it? Because of the integrations, right? If you don't have those integrations, that means that you're not going to be able to integrate. There's two types, by the way. This is important because a lot of people forget. There's data integration, which again, like if you have operations, this is important to you because you want to be able to have that to feed so that you can visualize and make heads or tails and have a lot more access to data, metadata, and we're just essentially all data brokers now. And then the second one is the third one is going to be the integration across the IoT stack for the workflow automations. So I gave you a couple examples of how people can actually 10x the productivity of the same person, which means that you literally are doing 10 times more with the same resources. Doing more with less is like the definition of IoT for me, because if you're not able to do that, you're not able to scale. And if you're not able to scale, it's because you don't have the proper processes and automations that are going to allow you to do that. And that's going to be your biggest limiting factor. So that's why understanding that those things are very necessary for IoT. It's not just about connectivity.
Right. I think education too, like this part of the reason why we're doing this, educating people on the best way to launch their project or launch their solution. And then the resources is the key, right? You can do more with less nowadays in this environment. So, and then the network access, right? What type of network access do you need, right? That's
oh my God, that's a great point. That is a great point, because a lot of people, they don't know, right? Like that many times if you are trying to just provide coverage and you don't know, maybe some of the technologies that you should be looking for to kind of replace some of the sunsetting ones. I've talked already about LTE-M and NB-IoT. If you're not familiar, guys, those are called low power wide area network technologies. And there's differences between the two. And there's actually specific use cases that they're going to be beneficial for you, right? And depending on what you're moving from, you should really be aware of those, because you don't want to decide on the wrong technology, because again, that's going to limit your ability to scale, and you're going to have problems when you're trying to provide connectivity, and it's not going to be reliable. So having somebody that you can lean on to give you some expertise, give you some guidance, and to help break things down in a way that's going to make it easier for you to feel comfortable with these changes that are coming and prepare you to be able to take advantage of them. That's probably the most important thing. You need partners in this thing. Everybody needs a good partner. You can't do this on your own.
Yep.
And that's the things what I hear, David, is coverage. I hear coverage all the time. There's the coverage and network access are two totally separate things.
That's
so
right.
Keep that in mind.
Yeah, partnerships is incredibly important when it comes to the IT space. I think it's something that companies are realizing more and more the value of every day. So it's a very good point. I'm curious from your conversations, when you have those conversations with customers, the external customers that you deal with, do any of them ever have concerns of moving their product to a cloud-based solution? And if so, what are those concerns? How do you respond to them? How do you kind of
Yeah, absolutely. So, I actually, we had spoken to about that, because there was some of my technical staff here. I posed that question to them, and I was like, what would you guys say to something like that? Because I've been reading a lot lately, and you see people have concerns, you see data breaches like all the time now. I'm on LinkedIn, and there's like not one day that goes by where I'm not seeing some new thing that got hacked. Hospitals are getting hacked, schools and colleges are getting hacked. Everybody is getting hacked. So it's almost an inevitability. So you're thinking, whoa, is it a good idea to go to the cloud? Well, I would say this to you. NASA uses the cloud. The government uses the cloud. That's going to have probably the experts when you're talking about being able to prevent a denial of service attack. Who's going to be better than AWS at preventing that? Are you going to have the staff that has the expertise and the backup and all the resources and the staff to be able to handle that? Most likely not, right? So
Right.
It's a lot more secure, and it's trusted by really important agencies that handles very sensitive data. I think part of the problem is, like I said, many people just are not doing they're not doing their best to make sure that there's enough security on the endpoint side, or they're laxed on their cybersecurity processes, or it's always usually a human element anyway, right? So the more that you can do to ensure that you can remove as much of that responsibility from the user and provide them a foundation that's secure, that's scalable, and that's manageable, you can start using things like SSO. You can start integrating a lot of things that are going to help you with encryption and just being able to maintain the stability and security of the user's data that you're going to be handling, because we're connecting a lot of devices. That's what IoT is. And all of those devices are being connected, and they're sharing data, personal data from the users, and just the way that they're being used. So we need to take that more seriously. So that's what.
Absolutely. And do you,
No, that was it.
sorry. Yeah, cool. And when it comes to those conversations you have, and when you actually start working with these organizations, are there any challenges that you kind of make sure that they're kind of aware of, or that you see when it comes to moving their product to a cloud-based solution? Are there any kind of things that you actively are looking for to help prevent, or things that people should just be aware of that could come up in that process? But obviously you all will have it handled and work through it, but just stuff that people should be considerate of.
David, I'll let you answer that in a second. But first, I want to go back to the other piece. Like, I think what I've seen when I'm talking to customers is they have some old, antiquated systems that they don't know how to get rid of to continue to make it work. And they're like, "What's this going to cost me?" I'm like, sometimes I have to look at what's it going to cost you not to move to the cloud? What's it going to cost you to not be able to streamline your business a little more effective? And then they start to understand, okay, we have to unravel some of this stuff to make it right and future-proof our business. So
no, man,
sorry,
that's good. That's good additional info for that. The question one more time. I'm sorry, brother.
Yeah, so talking about more of the challenges that could potentially come up moving a product to a cloud-based solution, just kind of as that ties into the conversation around the concerns they may have. Like, there may be challenges. Are there challenges when they move their product, from your experience, and kind of what's the thoughts on overcoming?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, part of the importance of working with any vendor, really, especially when you're talking about something that's going to be a component, right, of a solution that you're providing for your customers, is knowing that you have somebody you can work with that has the expertise to guide you on best practices, right? That has an understanding of what are probably some of the limitations that you may be really struggling with versus what you think your limitations really are, right? Because they may not be aware of things, like Cloud Connect or direct cloud sharing, from a platform, and they're just maybe using a bunch of VPNs, and they don't understand, like, hey, instead of having to do all of that with your carrier, and how long does it take to set up an IPsec tunnel with your other carriers that you?
A long time, probably 3 months, and the cost is
so
through the roof.
That versus, let's say, using one of our services because we're on AWS, and maybe you may be too, being able to just 3 minutes and you've already connected all of your devices, and you've also connected the services to the applications. You're sharing data, and you're providing remote access. That's a huge savings to you, because you don't have to manage all those tunnels. You don't have to worry about the configurations. You don't have all that cost on top of it. And you're going to have a much easier time being able to reliably maintain that communication, and you're going to have redundancy, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's just too many benefits to name, but you may not be aware of that, and that's okay. That's kind of why this is all we do. This is all we do is just IoT. We are not dealing with people. We're not helping Susie trying to access her YouTube video on her iPhone because it's not working. When you call us, if we're handling your account and we're handling your business, we already know what devices you have on the network. We understand exactly what kind of issues you may be experiencing. We know how to troubleshoot. We know how to provide you real-time information that you're going to need to be able to make the best choices and options to make sure that you can avoid those downtimes and make sure that you enhance the robust, reliable communications that you want to provide. So having expertise, having a partner that understands what IoT is and that can give you the resources and guidance and best practices is the most valuable thing, because education is always going to be, the thing that people are lacking, and that's why they make the choices they do.
Yeah, when it comes to kind of additional keys to adopting these types of solutions, is there anything that companies on their end can really do to kind of help prepare for the conversation that they're about to have with you?
Keep an open mind. That's why I said at the beginning of this thing, just keep an open mind of the way things are changing and how we do business and how you do business today.
It's like a lot of people, they may be hung up on, hey, I don't know. This is my boss trusts this one, or we have had really bad experiences with cellular in the past. One of the biggest obstacles that we probably face as an IoT's connectivity provider is the perception that people have when it comes to cellular. Right? It wasn't always the most reliable thing. And by the way, if they were doing it the old way, why wouldn't they have a bad taste in their mouth? Right? Why wouldn't they have horror stories of the bad support or of endless, phone banks that drop the call and then no one's calling them back? Or having to spend an hour explaining to the guy what you need help with and that guy not knowing a lick about it and then waiting to get a supervisor on the phone and he's not available. Or dealing with multiple time zones in multiple languages, and escalations and resolution times. And, they don't know that stuff. They've dealt with the worst part of it.
How many devices do I have? What am I paying for? Right, David? How many devices? What am I paying for? Where are they at? How do I get rid of them? And I tell you, I've seen horror stories of working off spreadsheets and going through them and saying, okay, there's no data on these ones. And then they're like, I don't even know where those are. And customers paying over and over again because they're for fear of, if I turn that off, what's going to happen? They don't know.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. I was actually going to ask you about horror stories that you come across, but you kind of touched on a lot. You could touch on a lot of really good kind of things.
A lot of.
Yeah, I mean, I've had a conversation with people about network sunsetting and not being prepared for that, and the horror stories that come with that. There's horror stories of not having kind of control when it comes to roaming and switching networks and expanding deployments. Just lots of things that are just crazy to think about. But that's what these solutions are helping kind of build. Where do you see the future of this going? Like, where's the future of these cloud native solutions going as we kind of move through this year into next year into the future? It's obviously evolved a ton over the last few years, but as devices continue to increase, or the number of devices continues to increase, where do you see kind of the future of these solutions
going? The solution of these, the future of these solutions going into kind of like an app marketplace. That's what I see. I see that everything is going to be like, hey, instead of like building stuff and instead of developing things, you're going to have app stores, for these applets that are going to be on these eSIMs that are cloud-based. That's going to be a thing. And that's going to be the coolest part, because the people that are investing in that today are going to be the ones that are going to be light years ahead, and they're going to be able to take advantage of that technology. And they're the ones that are going to be just leaps and bounds ahead of everybody else. And that's, to me, like I said, the reason why I was excited to do this, the reason why me and Chad are always looking forward to, being able to engage with people. Again, I am not always the most technical guy, but I've been around. I have a lot of experience in this stuff. And the reason why I like the word expert is because if you look up the definition, expert just means somebody who's made every conceivable mistake in one specific field, right? So,
and learn from it, right? And learn from it.
Learn from what I've seen and the people that in the things that I've done, and just don't repeat them, right? And trust me, you are way better off just asking somebody, for their opinion and guidance that's already involved in the thing that you're trying to do. Don't go talk about jewels to a brick maker. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, right. Yeah, and through your presentation earlier, you talked a ton about the benefits of all this. What's going to help companies do. How can companies really get started becoming kind of cloud native with their solutions? Like, what's the best kind of approach for them to kind of start going down this path? If they're not there yet.
Well, I mean, I like to look at it as like, okay, if you're going to be reviewing and kind of taking a look at what you want to do to look at your roadmap and see what you want to offer, you should always have your customers in mind. Like, what are their needs? What problem are you looking to solve? And what about the current setup infrastructure that you have? what about it is beneficial, or what's an obstacle to you being able to deliver that to your customers or to the market or to fulfill that need. And if you take the time to really assess that and then look for expertise to kind of run them through on, hey, this is what I'm looking to do. This is currently where I'm at, and these are my obstacles, and this is what I'm afraid of. What really is my option? You know, because it's everybody is different, but we have to meet people where they are, and that means, do you even have developer resources, right? Because I mean, me talking about APIs is going to go right over your head.
Right.
Yeah, David, I think the one thing you look at it, right? If you look at it from you're a business and you look at it, you want yourself to be easy to do business with. And that's the other thing. You got to look at it. You want your customers to be easy to do business with. When you make it more complex to do business with you, it just throws a whole monkey wrench into everything. The ease of doing business is the key thing I think that people are looking for these days.
Okay, I'll tell you this before, because we're about to wrap up. I had to change a flight last year when I was in Berlin. Okay, and instead of having to call United, shout out to United, I went on there. I went on the app, and then they texted me, and I went through the text. 5 minutes. In 5 minutes, I had changed my flight, selected my seat, and I had confirmation sent to my app, and it updated on my boarding pass within 5 minutes. I didn't talk to anybody. That's what I want. I don't want to call somebody, have to explain myself, have to wait for somebody to call me, or wait 40 minutes to talk to someone. I don't. I really don't have the time. It's frustrating. If you can make it as easy for me to do what I need to do, then you've won my business. And I'm going to tell everybody about it, because I'm just told how many people, right? And I'm happy to share that story, because whenever I see somebody that's customer centric, that's focused on delivering exactly what their customers want, I'm going to shout it from the rooftops and make sure everybody knows.
Absolutely. Oh, that's fantastic. Well, again, thank you both for the time today. I think our audience is going to get a ton of value out of not just the ones who are here, but the ones who are going to watch us on demand as well. For the audience who wants to follow up, ask questions, we obviously have the slide up here with the website QR code to kind of get information and connect with you. Is that the best way to kind of follow up and engage post
Absolutely.
webinar?
And then please reach out.
Yes.
Like I said, this is really high level, and this is really more about, market education and just kind of giving you guys a little bit of context and some previews into what's coming down the line. And if you want to be prepared, if you want to learn more, if you want to understand and get some more education, or just have questions, there's no commitment. Feel free to reach out. We'll be happy to answer them and happy to engage with you and see what we can do to help you out, so we can get you connected.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I think a lot of companies have the hesitation of reaching, companies have the hesitation of reaching out because they just feel like they're going to be sold to. They're going to, but I think there's that level of, you guys understand the importance of that relationship and helping educate and helping people kind of get to the point where they're ready to adopt, which isn't always right away. And understanding that, it's going to make people feel a lot more comfortable engaging after something like this. So really appreciate the time, and this was fantastic.
Awesome, brother. Thank you very much, and thank you everyone for watching.
Thank you again.
Yeah, but thank you all again for being here, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, guys.